Hey there, welcome to yet another episode of Nerds with Badges, July the 12th, Saturday. For everybody else, for me, it's Monday, my first day back at work. I'm off on Thursdays and Fridays. I will have a new schedule, maybe, coming up. They're doing some changes here at the job, so I might end up having a different schedule, so I guess I will see. I went to see Superman and I wanted to do a review because I did a quick video, little TikTok video where I was talking about like a little brief, little 1 minute and a half. These are banana rice cakes. Gotten addicted to these things over the years. Only place I can find them is at 7-Eleven, but it's like marshmallow with this kind of like sort of banana flavored sort of gummy type of gel type of thing, and it's got like cream. I mean, it's really good. I'm addicted. Maybe they put some kind of drugs in it or something, but anyway, they're expensive. They're like $8 for 4. So I haven't eaten any in a long time. I used to always go over to 7-Eleven and try these. I actually got introduced to these by Mushi's, I think it's called. They're like, I think it's Japanese ice cream. But anyway, I'm going off and get to think about food because I'm kind of hungry. But I did go see Superman, and I really enjoyed it. I would say out of, if I had to say out of 5 being like outstanding, I would give it a 4.5. So I want to give a review. I know a lot of people probably haven't seen it, but I'm just gonna give a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen it yet, and you hear about spoilers, you might want to tune out for at least for the next 5 or 10 minutes. So I thought it was interesting. Superman has got this message from his family, from his mom and his dad, telling him, when he goes to the planet, it's like a good message, really. Like, but part of the message is like missing because it got scrambled. So it turns out Superman, like almost like Goku, I guess, was sent here. We find out later, of course, Superman was actually supposed to come here and take over everything, but he didn't. The rest of the message, he never got. So he just thought he was supposed to just come here and just learn and live amongst humans. He was raised in Kansas by Martha and Jonathan Kent, and they instilled in him values. So that's who he ultimately decided, because he's kind of worried about who he is. If he really knows who he is, he's have kind of questioning himself, feeling bad, because he was believed this message. That is, he thought his family sent him from Krypton saying to be a good boy and help people, but it turned out the other part of the message that was missing was to take over everything. So Lex Luthor, I guess, was right. Which is kind of ironic. He was right about Superman's, what he was supposed to do, but I guess the potential for bad, is. I think about my life. I was raised with a lot of morals and values and stuff that I don't really see that a lot of people have nowadays, and sometimes it trips me out. But I also I grew up reading a lot of comic books and looking up the heroes and stuff. But I had my parents didn't get married, but I did have a mother and a father, and they instilled in me some values and morality. And I was, I grew up on a farm too, just like Superman. I'm from North Carolina. I lived on a farm. We had pigs and cows and all that. I used to see them, kill the animals sometimes. It was crazy. But I try to imagine what my life could have been like if I had been raised differently. And I see some of the people people making, doing crazy things, and I wonder what their lives would have been like. Because I like to believe that most people probably, if they've been raised under a better situation, they would have turned out differently. I mean, sometimes people change, a lot of things are so good. I like to believe that there's shades of gray in everyone, and I like to believe that people can change and become great, even if they might be initially just shitty, trashy people, just maybe the result of the environment that they've been in and the people that they've been around. So I tend to like the characters that are some of the characters I really like a lot are characters that might have been villains. It's Rogue and the X-Men, for a perfect example. Rogue was a bad guy, and now she's become like a big part of the X-Men family, has her own team in Louisiana and everything. New Orleans. Xena was a bad guy. Ended up becoming a noble character, got her own series and everything. Venom is now a good guy. Initially he was not. Hated Peter Parker. Him and Eddie Brock, they were haters. Trying to think of some other bad characters. I mean, Winter Soldier, I guess you could say, but he was brainwashed. Prince Namor, or King Namor of Atlantis, I like his character because, he's, one of my favorite, probably, my favorite X-Men character. He's a mutant. Actually, I just got the costume, the X-Men costume for Namor. So I'll be uploading that onto social media later tonight. But Namor is a noble character who became good. And one of my favorite, well, I won't say he became good, it's sort of like I guess he's kind of like Magneto in that he's, he's sort of you could call him an anti-hero. I think Ultron is now a good guy in the comics. My brain, I just had like a brain fart. There was one of my favorite characters. There was a Transformers cartoon that used to come on back in the 90s. It was called the Transformers Beast Wars. And one of my favorite characters on the show, my favorite character on the show was Dinobot. Dinobot actually was a Decepticon, but then he became an Autobot, and just was a very noble character, and ended up basically sacrificing himself in the end, and it was just really amazing. And then Gaara from Naruto, classic bad guy, just hated him, just couldn't stand the character. He just went through a great story arc and became one of my favorite characters on the show. So I like those characters. People, I guess I know that there's darkness in everybody. Like I said, there's shades of gray in everybody. Probably even God is not perfect. I mean, I know it's controversial, but if you can make things with shades of gray in them, I don't know, it's just, and according to a lot of the stories about the gods or these deities, they quarrel amongst each other and fight and murder each other and cheat and have kids out of, I just... So, I mean, if man was created in God's image, I guess the thing is that none of us are perfect. And but anyway, getting off of that controversial. So Superman, Lex Luthor was really, a good villain. He got on my nerves. Probably not as much as Krypto, because let me tell you, that dog was a problem. Okay, that dog was a problem. The movie hits the ground running. The scene that we kept seeing in the trailer, where he falls out of the sky and he's bleeding, and Krypto comes and brings him back to the Fortress of Solitude. That is actually the beginning of the movie. Superman. There's a little explain about everything that's going on with with Superman and superheroes. Excuse me. We don't get the origin. We don't have to see him get. We don't have to see Peter Parker get bit by a spider. At the beginning of every Spider-Man movie, or Batman's parents gunned down in the alleyway. We don't need to see that every time. They just skipped right to it. So he's falling out of the sky. Crypto takes him back to the cave, to the fortress. The robots, they expose him to, the sunlight. He heals. It's real painful because his organs are repairing and bones are, mending or whatever. And so he's got this relationship with Lois, and they're having issues, which I thought was interesting. They almost, damn near broke up. Superman is an immigrant. I think I just think it's interesting how a lot of stuff now is just being labeled woke by people that really just don't really understand what woke is, where it came from. Because it was just, initially it was just something that, black people, we would say, stay woke, which is just stay aware of what's going on. Somehow that word got into the mainstream and is being used by a lot of people, who just non-black people most of the time, 95% of the time. And I just think that that's interesting. Superman is from another world. He came here and he's making a life for himself. And but you get on shaky moral ground, when you start interfering with other people's business, which is kind of like some people say when the United States gets involved in stuff going on with other countries, like we should mind our business or whatever. But if you have the powers of to do something, like Superman, and you see, like in the Christopher Reeve's Superman 4, Christopher Reeve went and took all the damn nuclear weapons and threw them into the sun and got rid of them. Threw them into the sun or threw them in outer space. Just got rid of them. So if we had somebody like Superman, or maybe even more people like that, sometimes I wish that there was somebody that would come down here and spank mankind and make them act right. Because the way we kill each other just over BS. Any second, snap my finger right now, there's probably thousands of people dying in the world over just BS. Fighting over territories, materials, money, and really, I know it sounds corny, but if we could come together, we could accomplish miracles. But it only tends to happen when there's a major disaster. So Superman, he interferes in this war, and all this stuff was orchestrated by Lex Luthor, who's just incredibly, you got to suspend disbelief in some of these things. But this guy's got so much money, and he's really smart, but he's got all these people working with him, which I thought that makes sense, because it's almost like people talk about God, doing all of these things, and it's like, realistically speaking, if you're going to have other people assigned, it's just inconceivable that one being or person could just. So like Lex Luthor, he's got a team, that are working with him, that are helping him, and he creates this clone of Superman. I don't know if he used. I was expecting them to say he used some of his own DNA, like how they did with Superboy, but they don't really say that. I don't know. I guess they'll maybe if the villain comes back, the clone of Superman comes back again later, then we'll find out more. But I don't know if he's going to be coming back. It's kind of like in season 1 of My Hero Academia, the anime about the superhero school, where the villains are just kind of sucked into a black hole. But they probably will come back. So the clone will probably come back at some point. But I think that James Gunn did a really good job. I think the pacing was overall. There were some parts where I was just kind of like, but I was actually kind of sleepy because I only had like a few hours of sleep, and I went to like an early show because I didn't want to beat it. I was trying to beat the crowds. But anyway, that's part 1 of the review. I gotta cut it into pieces because I gotta start my shift, and I've got about 10 minutes before I start my shift. But that's part 1 of my Superman review. But I definitely think that go see it with an open mind, and with a child's heart, and I think you will enjoy the movie. It's a fun movie. It's not like earth shattering, going to change your life, but it's fun. and it might make you think about some things. No, it's not going to divide the country like Dean Cain said, or whatever some other people might have said in the media. I think people are just fucking crazy. I think sometimes people just say stuff just to get a reaction, you know. They're just kind of like trolls. And I really, I'll talk more. There's some other stuff that I want to say, but I'm gonna just cut this right now because I don't want to be late. So that's the end of part 1 of my Superman review. Nerds with Badges signing out for now.